to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Jacob, could you do a roll call, please?
Each John,
Here.
Jim Mueller,
Here.
Steve McComb,
Here.
Entertain a motion for today's agenda.
Move to approve today's agenda. Support.
McCombs,
Aye.
Mueller,
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye. Communications. Jake. Public comments. This is the portion of the agenda during which you can hear from any public comment that is not an agenda item below. These could possibly become future agenda items. Is there any public comments? So you can come to the podium. See anything online? Seeing no public comments, we'll move on. On to the consent agenda. Entertain a motion for today's consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda. Second.
Mueller,
Aye.
Johnner,
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Moving right along on to business. Item number 1 is the public hearing. It's a public hearing in the matter of the Board of Supervisors of Marion County in the state of Iowa on the matter of the proposal to enter into an agreement number 2 to the amendment and restatement of the 2080 agreement with the city of Knoxville. Board, this is the public hearing portion. Just want a reminder, this is what we had spoke about in the spring regarding the 2080 agreement regarding laundry building, Young's Park, and a possible the school site. So this is the public hearing portion. Is there any public comments?
Good morning. Kelsey Pearson from the Knoxville Community School District, and I just want to commend the Board of Supervisors for your collaborative partnership with the city on the Veterans District and getting that developed out. And very excited about this phase 2. I want to thank you for your continued consideration for allowing a potential elementary school to go on that back portion. We do have our ballot question coming up in November. And look forward to seeing what our community thinks of the idea. But we just want to thank you. And again, we are very supportive of Amendment 2 and you will support it today as well.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. This is the public hearing. Is there any other public comments? You seeing anything online? Entertain motion to close public hearing.
Close public hearing. Second.
Johnner,
Aye.
McCombs,
Aye.
Mueller,
Aye.
Resolution 2, or number 2 is resolution 2025-87. This is the resolution approving and authorizing execution of amendment number 2, as we spoke about regarding the public hearing. Board, do you have any questions regarding this? Again, as I would just like to restate that this was what we kind of spoke about. Well, it was what we spoke about in the spring. So there's no further questions. Entertain a motion.
You move to approve resolution 2025-87. Support.
McCombs,
Aye.
Mueller,
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye. Item number 3. This is the School Resource Officer 2080 agreement. This agreement is pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 2080 between Marion County, Iowa, Melcher Dallas, and the Twin Cedars School District. I'm assuming Mr. Bridges is here today. Board, I believe this was brought to us what's it, maybe 6 weeks ago, a couple months ago, and Scott has brought back before us an agreement and further discussion.
Yes, so after hearing the certain discussion from the last time we brought it here for this discussion, I went back and met with my boards and both were in agreement that the cost should be divided appropriately according to the amount of hours that the individual would work in whatever entity, whether it's Melcher, Dallas, Twin Cedars, or the sheriff's department, and agreed to cover the additional costs above and beyond what they would receive in an operational sharing dollar from the state. After doing some math and determining how many hours, it would be about 1,080 hours for the school district of the 2,080 hours that's considered full-time employees. So it's about 52%. So as you would see in the agreement, the costs would be shared 26%, 26% for each school district, and then 48% for the Marion County. That would be the cost associated with it, not just salary and benefits, but also other things like equipment and training and like any vehicles or whatever we have to provide. So and Jason had shared with me, Sheriff Sanholm had shared with me that would be about $115,000. It was a pretty good estimate is what he felt like what it costs to put a deputy on the road.
Those are, you feel those are the true costs of the equipment and salary?
Well, the 115 is the wages,
Okay.
benefits, all that side of things. Yeah, I mean, you're on the cost of a vehicle, or whether we can absorb one right now, a vehicle cost may come down the road in regards to the cost of a vehicle along those lines.
So
But I mean,
150
the 115,000 is a true, that's what we use for the mental health deputy position. That's kind of the wages, benefits, FICA, insurance,
But
work.
that doesn't include the cost of equipment, vehicle, and or
Right, the big,
certification.
the biggest thing is when we do an interview process, we hire somebody, if we hire somebody that's certified, or you don't have the cost of academy.
Right.
If somebody's not certified, you're about 10 grand, 10 to 12,000 for the cost of an academy to get somebody, but
So this will be a new position.
this is a new position. Yep, the position we talked about before, I mean, was a replacement from the position I already had. This one is a new position. I mean,
The only concerns I have, Jason, if somewhere down the road, the schools decide, well, we can't afford this anymore. So now then it's up to us to absorb all the rest of these costs.
And I understand those costs. I mean, and Cassie, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but when Cassie just walked in earlier, or whatever, we was talking, what's everybody doing here for the meeting type deal. And I said, I may call on you. I said, you've had a school resource officer for a long time. I mean, and is it beneficial? What are your thoughts? Are those things? And Cassie, if you want to share what you told me, I'll step back and let you know what your thoughts were on it. I mean, not to put you on the spot, I apologize.
Yeah, the Knoxville schools have had their SRAO program in collaboration with the city since 2010. And it originally started out with a 3-year cost grant that funded it. And when that expired, I think both entities agreed that it was an excellent program and needed to be maintained. So we found additional ways to create that funding stream. And ours is also a 50-50 share. So the school pays 50% of things, as does the city. And we just talk annually. We meet annually on the position and talk about, are there additional trainings that are needed? Is there equipment? And we all have to agree to those. And then we do share those costs. If one of us has something that we want that employee to attend, and it's really only beneficial to the school, then the school picks that up. The same with the city. One of the things that we also have talked about over the years is that position with staffing shortages. It's a pretty very fluid give and take. So when the PD is short staffed, they sometimes use that officer a little bit more. If they have somebody at the academy and they're just waiting for a few weeks, they'll come and go between the school and the city a little bit more. If we ever determined at the school that we could no longer afford that, it would probably be something that the city would look and see if they have a retirement coming. And that person then could just shift into that full-time position.
That's my point, Kathy.
So we revisit it every year. Our agreement is, I think this last time we did do a 3-year agreement. was it 5? We have done that annual agreement so many times. We decided it's working really well, so we extended it to 5 years. But if either organization has a time where it's not working or we can't afford it, we will get back together and there is a termination clause in there. And our employees know that it might mean that they are no longer an employee because the position is stated to be funded 50/50. So I think those are things you can put into your agreement, that it doesn't necessarily mean that the county would be on the hook to sustain that position if the school's backed out, but you would just want to write that if either entity is no longer able to sustain the agreement, that position might be eliminated.
Well, yeah, that's what I fear.
I would not do it though, out of that long term.
Don't get me wrong, I think the position is probably very beneficial. Don't
Extremely.
get me wrong on that. It's my worry is in the future, how do we fund these things?
Yeah, I will tell you too, and Scott knows this just as well, the state safety is really critical, and in the state of the world that we live in right now, they continue to find safety money for schools. Some of that is coming from businesses and other organizations, some is coming from governmental agencies, but we continue to have opportunities to help fund safety measures. And I would see that probably continuing in the foreseeable future.
Did I hear you correctly when you said that if, like the Knoxville PD, if they were short staffed for some reason, you guys were willing to kind of shift that over?
We do. Chief Fuller oversees that SRO position, and there have been times where they'll come in and check in on the schools, but then need to go do some other city business, and they might come back towards the end of the day. So they aren't necessarily in our buildings full time if the city has needs.
Yeah, so my only concern is hiring somebody and all of a sudden you down the road and say, oh, yeah, we don't need you anymore. You know?
I can address that over this. Thank you, Cassie. I can address that. After our last meeting, I obviously went to research, 2080 agreements. I mean, this isn't unique to Marion County. I went and looked across the state on different ones. There's a wide variation on, I mean, some sheriff's offices pay way more, some pay less. They go back and forth. There's that variation that's there. But when I did the research on it and checking, it's like all of them were like, we'll come up, we'll find the position was so important. We'll find the money. I mean, and that's in it.
That's my next question.
Yep, understand.
And your current budget, the same this is if it goes away.
I think that. To
I
answer,
don't want to see somebody coming down the road and say, oh, I gotta increase my budget now.
well, here's the question. I would ask, I mean,
You see
I
my
feel
concern?
I feel it is so important. I will do everything I can do in my budget. If you decide, Jason, we're not giving you a dime. I mean, I will do everything. I feel so important about it. I'm willing to try it and I'm willing to do it. What I don't think is fair about that is if the next elected official or the next, individual comes in and says, I want this or whatever, are you gonna say the exact same thing to them? That they want a new whatever X, Project X or Project Z or a piece of equipment or whatever. It's like, well, can you buy that out of your own budget? I feel this is one of those that's so important. I would ask that you contribute to it. But if you're saying, Jason, I'm not gonna give you a dime for it, I'll take on the responsibility and do what I feel. is
I'm not singling you out. Dude.
No, I
singling
know,
out
that's all I
budgets
ask.
in general,
Yeah, that's,
because we don't have an unlimited fund.
understand, but that's what I would ask. I feel so important about
That's
it.
the question I'm at.
Yeah, I feel so important about it. If you said, Jason, you gotta do it on your own, I'm willing to do it. With, not on my own, but with partnership with the schools in regards to my end of the budget, per se.
I feel the questions have to be asked.
Yeah, sure, fair question, fair.
After the last time you spoke, I got to thinking, and most of these agreements are between cities and schools. Where is the city of Bussey and where is obviously Melcher Dallas? I know that we have a contract with them that the sheriff signs. We don't as a board, but that's an agreement between the sheriff and the city of Melcher. Have you reached out to them?
Have I reached out to the city to see if they would be willing to share the costs? I have not. And the reason, I don't know, I didn't even think of it, but Honestly, we're in a sharing agreement with, I mean, in order to have a position like this, it has to be an entity that has, peace officers employed. And so I don't even know if it's allowable or if they would, if it's something that it almost feels like it would just be donating money towards the cost. They couldn't, I don't know that they could be in the agreement, with all legalities behind that, but it's something that I could certainly look.
The ones I'm sorry, the ones I found do not do that. The ones are all between like, and you might have between the school and the city, if that's the spot that is, but the other ones that I'm talking about, those 2080s, it's the sheriff's office and the school district. Or districts.
Kind of to dovetail onto that, first, let me say that I'm 100% in support of making investments in the safety and education of our youth. So in that regard, I'm very much in favor of moving forward with this in some form or fashion. And I think what Keisha is going towards, at least what I'm interpreting, what she's headed down the path of is, okay, the county's paying for 48%. What if we have another school entity say, oh, you know what, that's a great idea, we want to participate, and they take of those 4,000 hours that's left that goes to the county, to the sheriff's department, they come back and say, you know what, we want to take 200 hours of that. Would we be available, Jason, would you be agreeable to say, you know what, instead of 52% going to schools for school resource officer, maybe it's 58 or 65 or whatever, but they pay that incremental portion of that $117,000 or $115,000. In that regard, then we can offer the same benefits countywide to say any school system within the county, we have a school resource officer opportunity that we can help provide that to the schools. 52% goes to these two districts. But what about the rest of them? And is that where you're headed?
Well, just the contracts that I looked at work between cities and schools, and so that made me want to pause and ask that question. I too am supportive. I just want to ask that, and I want us as the board to think about, we're helping Twin Cedars and possibly Melcher. What about the rest of the schools in the county?
So I was asking you that.
Yeah.
So we actually had meetings, about this. I mean, we've been talking about this for the better part of 3 or 4 years, and we met with, Tony Ellsworth from Pleasantville was there. He was considering at one time. They haven't moved forward with it. I think they're in, maybe I'm speculating, but I heard they were in talks with their municipality police force there in Pleasantville. Knoxville and Pella are already being served by in an agreement. You can only have one agreement for one SRO, so that I don't know that they could be in another agreement.
But what happens, look, I'm posing this question because Knoxville's or Pella's can't provide because they're sick. He or she is sick. I mean, do you get where I'm going with this? I just want to make sure that when we look at Marion County, we're looking and we're not just picking Melcher and Twin Cedars. We're thinking, okay, what about Marion County as well? And so is that, I don't know if that's ever been done where you pull somebody and they have an event or, they need somebody extra and they're helping out or filling in, substituting, just all questions.
We all work together. I just don't see many agreements like that because, it's usually that agreement between that entity and, Knoxville and Knoxville schools or Pella and Pella community schools. We just don't see that over. It's not that we're not gonna help it. If there was ever an active event in Marion County where help is needed, it's not only just the SROs, it's everybody is coming to help in those situations. Back to your first question on it, Scott's exactly right. We've had discussions with Pleasantville, and it's something if Pleasantville decided, hey, we want 200 hours or something, I'm not against that. But I don't want to short chuck the two schools that have already committed and have the buy-in and we're here and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, now we're gonna try to do other things. I wouldn't want to take away from what they're asking, if that's fair in regards to the amount. And they may say down the road, hey, we'd like to pay 65% of the time. We feel this is whether it be, activities at night, whether it be different things, we need more hours, we need more things. That's not to say that this is a start. This is a start of the relationship that is very, very, very beneficial in my mind. I think the school boards think it is, and Scott thinks it is, that moving down the road, we did a one-term agreement on this for the duration of it to test it, to see, and back to Steve's point. You may feel more comfortable, we should have a 5-year. So there is a commitment for both sides for those 5 years, so one doesn't back out or different things without cost, not just funding, but without a reason. I'm not opposed to that. I don't know what your school board would say or what. He'd have to take that back, but it's something that I think we can start with this and then figure out where it goes. And once that, if we want more security, like you're saying, Steve, I mean, that's not.
I will say, I do think it's important that I did read some of the contracts and. The contract in which I read it, it's pretty open-ended. I do feel that there are some duties, not to. But I'm gonna pull out Pellis. They've got 20 different items on there that school resource officer will do, which I think is good. I think that there's a lot of shalls in there that it should be done. And I think that the contract probably needs to have more direction in which what that school resource officer is going to do.
Last time I was here, I shared with you folks, the performance responsibilities of the position. So it's not in that contract, but we
Okay.
could add it as an appendix, as an addendum.
Yeah,
See
I
that
think that is.
It's
that's
just
important.
broad.
Yeah.
And we're in agreement. I mean, Scott and I are, and decided it's like, those duties, we want those, the most important thing that I found in these different things, and I mean, Cassie, mentioned it when she was up here, the relationship and the communication. This isn't one of those deals where, we just give somebody and we don't ever have a conversation again, or, Scott takes somebody, it's that dialogue. Because and truly, I don't mean to speak for you, but what we want is those developments of those relationships with that school resource officer and the things that are there with community members. So I don't have to, it'll reduce the amount of times I have to deal with somebody down the road or we're at the sheriff's office. It provides the benefits that are there. We're mutually in agreement. But if there's certain things, Keisha, that you think, hey, we really need to have this, I think we're both open to.
I think we need to look at a little longer term agreement.
Actually, I was gonna speak up and say, you know what, I like the 1 year agreement, at least initially. Only because we only know what we know, and right now, we don't know what this is gonna look like. And we don't know what other entities might wanna participate in. In fact, I'm a big supporter of crawl, walk, run. This is a great way to start crawling. Then let's build into walking and then eventually go into running, where, you know what? As Keisha pointed out, you know what, let's get this process started. We get an officer, we get it in there, then we start knowing what the costs are. And then we can start looking at the other school districts and saying, okay, this thing is up and running. It costs $500 an hour or $100 an hour, whatever, pick a number, in order to have that SRO in your school system. Would you like to participate? And reach out to them and say, you know what, this is a benefit countywide that, yeah, you know what, if you don't want it, we can certainly use the hours in the sheriff's department. But if you want it, this officer is designated as SRO countywide, but you gotta pay for it if you want him to show up. So then you can kind of go to it. And then after the 1 year agreement, then we can start building in more of those hooks of saying, okay, this is a 3 year commitment or a 5 year commitment, or whatever it is. And I also like to put in there that $115,000 might be the payroll, but that may not necessarily cover all the expenses, as you said, for equipment and all those things. As soon as we start buying cars and guns and radios and all that other stuff and or additional training, then that expense goes up, which should not be on the county. It should be at least partially shared by the school districts. So I think this is a great start,
And I think
and then we build on it from there.
And I think those two main costs, like you just mentioned, would be the vehicle or whatever, and then if we have to send somebody through the academy. Those are the other ones. I have enough in my budget right now. I can buy the duty belt, I can buy the uniform, I can buy things that are.
Don't offer budget.
All right, I'm sorry.
Jason, you're saying you got fluff in your budget.
Well, no, I'm just saying, for that $1,000, I can take care of that.
I think for
But to a
clarification,
good point on the vehicle and the.
I think for clarification, Twin Cedars and Nelson Delk was kind of a different cat, because they do not have police forces. Pleasantville does, so maybe Pleasantville, they do their internal, that's all.
It's a great
And
point.
they had, Pleasantville had an SRO program that was up there or whatever, and then they couldn't sustain it, things that, there was different things there. And
I would like to say I did reach out to Tony, in Pleasantville, the superintendent, and, yes, their chief of police is working with them. So, yeah,
Okay.
because I wanted to make sure that they weren't being left out.
In our
And-
original
and-
meetings,
and I-
he was involved.
He was involved.
And then that started happening.
And I think that's a great point, though. Steve and Keisha both, is, you know what, if they have an opportunity to partner with their resident police force, I think that should be their primary. And now whether that excludes them from the countywide opportunity, I'm not sure we're necessarily ready to do that yet, but I also don't want to be the cheapest possible solution for somebody to say, oh, well, you know what, it cost me $500 if I go with the local PD and only $450 I go with the county. I don't want to get into
No.
that race to the bottom for costing associated.
Back in the day, originally, my father was the first school resource officer in Marion County, and he did both Knoxville and Pella. And so, I do see the importance of it. I do think that we as a board need to make sure that we're fully understanding, so, the sheriff is wanting an additional person, okay, so that's really why this is coming for us. Otherwise, the sheriff can sign these agreements. So going forward, we may not see these agreements. This will be something that he would work with, which currently he does that with Melcher Dallas. He does, those agreements.
Or the city is nothing.
Sorry,
Yeah.
not the school, but the
I
city, yeah.
remember that.
And,
If you wanna take over those negotiations, I'm more than happy to.
I'm just explaining.
Hey, I love it, but I.
We won't see that. I mean, we may not see these again, right? This comes down to, are we, as a county, willing to say, hey, out of budget season, we're doing this outside budget. Are we willing to say we want another employee?
So is that legislatively established that once this is approved by us to add this position, we no longer have any input in it whatsoever? Or is that something that we can put in the contract, in the agreement, that it needs to be annually approved by the board of supervisors?
It might-
And that takes it out of Jason's hands so that we still have at least input and, I won't necessarily say control, but yes, control and input on what that negotiation looks like. You bring us the final product and we say yes or no.
What the agreement says, Marion County,
Okay.
on the agreements, so it's in my opinion, and if all of a sudden, I mean, if, let's say, 2 years down the road. Or whatever, that where Keisha's correct is that a new deputy position has to be approved by you three.
Right.
The budget side of it is always fluid on that side. I mean, what, if I ended up saying, hey, I feel this is so important or whatever, my investment of let's just say 3 down the road, we got the car, we got that side of it. And I say my 60,000 is so important, I want to stay with us, like I was willing to do early on. And you say, well, we need 60,000 somewhere else in the county, Jason, we're cutting that out of your budget, you can do that. That could void that agreement on it or whatever, but I mean, that's the budget where the give and take side, but I mean, I hope you don't do that. I hope that if it's something where, once it's established, you say, yeah, this is fabulous, I mean, maybe, you know.
I just think it's important though that everybody understands, really it comes down to the one position.
Yes.
And that, because otherwise, Jason has the capability within his budget, if he wanted to do an agreement such as this, with the school, that he could.
With existing staff.
With
He couldn't
existing-
hire.
Correct, he could not, yes, with his existing staff, he could do that.
But I can't.
Right,
So-
you don't have the.
I don't have the resources to do that, I don't have the capacity to.
So I'm gonna ask this, Jason, because I think it's important that, we as a board understand, so you have an agreement with the Corps, and that's in a summer agreement. Why couldn't you use the person that does the summer agreement with the Corps and then to turn around and do the other with school resource officer?
Those start in April and go into we're still in that contract now. Those months that's a 6-month contract, and which we make a lot, I mean, it's a very profitable for us to have that 6-month contract with the Corps or whatever, I mean, that's another one that you please don't ever get rid of, because the amount of money that comes into the county from that Corps
No,
contract
I
is
think it's
huge.
important that we just ask that. So
Yeah, so no, I can't do that.
I would say this, these one-offs, outside of budget time are a little difficult. I think, from my standpoint, it is difficult. Because it's, we also have to think of the impacts and how that impacts the budget long-term. I would prefer this to be within budget time. as we were discussing it during budget, you were coming and you were saying, hey, here it is, this is what we're looking at, this is the cost. That would be easier from, I think, a standpoint of setting here. But if you have it within your budget to do it this year, and then we could discuss it at budget time, that would be great, but I wanna hear what the board has to say.
I think if it's in your budget, I'm okay with it, although I would tell you, after the first year, I would want to really validate what that actual cost is and make sure that everybody's in agreement that that 115, is that just net pay, or is that with retirement, health benefits, and all of those things?
I
that
see
we
what
need to
you're
make
saying,
sure that-
we're not able to afford it after that.
Yeah, well, and I just want to make sure that we're really accounting for the full and accurate costing of having an additional officer. And share those expenses. So, I'm in favor of it.
So I think we need some clarity though. Are you in favor of him having the school resource officer as long as he can fund it within his own budget?
I think for year one, at least until the next budget season, if you've got room for it.
I don't know, but I'm willing to, I mean, the question is, yeah, if that's the way it has to be, we'll do it that way. But the only thing I ask is down the road, each board supervisor meeting I come to, or whatever, it's gonna be, hey, I mean, if you want a new piece of equipment or whatever, or if you need this, or you want that, or whatever, that it's like, well, you have to take it out of what you have. I mean, that's for anything above and beyond.
I won't sugarcoat it. Next budget last budget session was ugly. Next one's gonna be even uglier. I mean, there's no sugarcoating, because the state's really cut us off at the knees. But we need to really focus on what we can afford and what's really the primary focus of county government. And that's, my opinion, health, safety, and providing for the ability to do business, county roads, those fire departments, emergency services. Those are the things the county government really have to do. Everything else, if you have money for it, then you can do some of the fluff stuff, and I agree with that. But that doesn't mean that the next budget session is gonna be any easier, certainly less easy than this last one, and this last one was not easy. So
Fair,
my
fair.
point to you is I don't anticipate cutting your budget necessarily, but if you want to get started now, I'm not necessarily ready to say, okay, we're gonna give you extra money this year out of this budget.
Then to answer your question, yes, I will.
Okay. That's what I was looking for, is if it's that important. I mean, I'm certainly okay with moving forward with it and making the commitment to you and to the public of, I will support an SRO officer in the next budget. However that looks. Now, if we can manage and reduce the impact of that, now I recognize the school systems are gonna provide 52%, we gotta come up with 48. I'm pretty comfortable in saying, yeah, you know what, I'm sure we can find it somewhere, either within your budget or within the county budget somewhere. Sure. Because I think it's an important investment in our kids' future and safety.
That's fair.
So I think, Steve, do you have any questions?
No,
So if I'm understanding this right, I do think that it's important that this agreement does go through Jared to make sure that it's reviewed.
That's
Okay.
fair.
But that we're in agreement of school resource officer 2080 agreement. And allowing our sheriff's department to hire, but he's gonna pay within his own current budget.
Would you repeat the last portion of that, please? You're in agreement with,
We're in agreement to have a school resource officer, but he's gonna have to fund it within his own current budget.
For the current year.
For the
For
current
next
year.
year.
Yep.
Did you also want to add?
Yes,
a list of
the responsibilities to the.
Yeah,
add the
we'll work with Jared on what to add that in there, so you.
I would also like for you to go to the school boards and I understand where Jim's coming from, but I'd also like to know what their commitment is in the future, if they would look at a more extended.
Yeah, I prefer to do that.
I know we're not asking for that now.
Right.
And I agree with you on that point.
Both boards have been asking me to work on this for several years, and it's been in, like, we've been having discussions about it, like I said earlier, for several years, so I know that it's important boards. I don't know that that will be a problem, but I don't want to speak for.
I just don't wanna have to hire somebody this year and all of a sudden, well, you know, and if it does work out, great. You know, I'm very supportive of that. But I don't wanna have to tell this person that we hire, oh, guess what? We don't have the money now.
So do we have a motion?
I move to approve the addition of the school resource officer per the agreement and the adjustments of the changes that we have proposed, including the responsibilities added as an addendum contract for 1 year, and approving the hiring of the officer immediately per Jason's current budget. Jason, are you getting that all down?
It's important.
Okay, good. In the current budget with the addition of the officer and
I second.
Mueller,
I,
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Item number 4. Today, there's item number 4 of the planning and zoning 2080 agreement. The city, county planning zoning agreement between Marion County and Hilla. Missy, I appreciate you stepping forward for this morning.
So, yeah, I put some, timeline together, for you as board, all this took place, July 2003, so it's been in effect in some sort for, a few years. So, originally there was a sub area A, B, and C, and they mirrored the lot sizes in Marion County. So, and then in first amendment was August 2011, where there was an amendment, to that lot size in the A1 zoning under policy control to the 3 acres, which was Marion counties. Then the second amendment took place in December 2020, where as spelled out, there was more, significant changes added, and I guess for consistency, with the property owner, for them not now reduced down to 1 mile, I think the 2080 should continue in some fashion. I did specify a couple things that have been, either problematic for the county or the property owners within that 1 mile. We've had some different times where the last 2080 gave Hilla the right to waive jurisdiction, and there was no specified percentage. We ended up with a couple that were, did not have come back to Marion County because they were significantly more Hilla. And then in fairness to the property owners in that 1 mile, I guess it's my opinion, in the review process of that 2080 and 2020, there was a repealer that repealed everything in the prior agreements, including the minimum lot sizes. So now if you're in A1 within that 1 mile of Pella, you're required to have the same 10 acres you have in the city of Pella, instead of the allowed 3 acres in Marion.
No, board, I thought it was important that, Mr. Durkee's with us this morning, and thank you for coming. I thought it was important that we discuss this agreement, was, amended on December of 2020. It is something that can be reviewed every 5 years, and I felt that it was probably time to review it. I kind of look at this as just a little bit of a cleanup, if we could. Clearly, we want to make sure that we continue to have growth in Marion County, that we're working well together. I would like to see that this agreement would have at least 51%, that the jurisdiction in which with the 1 mile, and before the city could just automatically just turn it over. And then we have had quite a few questions come to us, and they struggle with people that have purchased ground in that 1 mile, and they don't understand why they have to follow the city's rules of 10 acres when they don't get the city's amenities, and they're living within the county. So the 3 acres would follow what we currently have, and I in no way want to go to 10 acres before somebody can do a buildable lot. We've seen that in other counties, and it's not worked well. There's been quite quite the discussion in regarding that, so, I guess why I brought this before is I think that it's something now that, we as a board kind of discuss, give direction. We're not here to give, I brought this before us so that we're not making a decision, but kind of getting from the board's direction of where we would like to start that discussion regarding the city of Pella. Whether it's myself and Missy working with Mike, and Gerald, at the city of Pella. And so, wanting to hear more of your thoughts.
What's our arrangement with other communities?
This is the only 28E we have, in Marion County. So the city of Knoxville and the city of Pleasantville, for 354.9 have right to review land division within their 2 miles. But there are no other 28E agreements as far as complete zone control.
But Missy, I think we need to make sure that the board understands when they have the right to review. So if you have a development that comes in that wants to do not to the city standards, does the city have the right to stop
Correct.
that?
So 354.9 does state that if there's a subdivision within the 2 miles of the city that has the right to review, and they're basically differing, the city rules will apply.
So they can refuse the development within
They
that
can
2
refuse
miles.
development or make it be built to city
To
standards.
So it is rather somewhat, it used to be two, like she said, used to be the 2 mile, and then it was layered and zoned. And then in 2020, we did the city of Pella and Marion County discussed, and we did the 1 mile. So,
You make a good point, Keisha, with, if I have to live by the building standards and the rules associated with being inside a resident of Pella, then why do I not get the benefits of any of those things, but yet I need to follow those rules? I think that's a good point. That's very fair. I'm not quite sure how we would address that necessarily, because that would take some changes within the city of Pella code. Certainly we can't speak to that, but I also think that it's something that we can at least bring up and discuss and say, hey, you know what, that's an inconsistency that I think is needs to be resolved.
I think it's an important time as well. I know the city of Pella is in the works of their comp plan as well as Marion County that, I mean, at this current time, Marion County's comp plan doesn't include that 1 mile. So, I mean, we are at a critical point of determining how, if there's gonna be any significant changes, then they need to be addressed at this time.
And I think the benefits, we also have to define what definitely define the benefits, because I would also tell you that there's benefits that is derived that the city of Pella provides to their citizens that are based upon tax revenues. Where if I'm not a resident of the city of Pella, my taxes, my property taxes are not going to pay to support the power, the water, the high-speed internet and those kind of things that a residential fees do. So I hesitate to say, yeah, we need to open the floodgates and say, if you're within the jurisdiction of the city of Pella for zoning and planning and zoning issues, then you need to have access to all of those benefits. I'm not saying that either, because I don't think personally that if I live outside the city of Pella, I should be able to add some of those amenities that the taxpayers inside the city of Pella have paid for.
I think to me, this was really taking what we currently have and then just trying to work with the two items. Defining the jurisdiction at least 51% of Marion County, then if it's in Marion County, then it comes to Marion County versus just if it's 2 or 3%.
Right.
And then in fairness to the property owners. I think we need to try to work out how we can do something between, the city has 10 acres, we have 3 acres. So I guess what I'm asking is, because clearly we have to talk about this, is there a direction in which you want Missy, myself, to work with the city of Pella to try to see what we can do to revisit this?
I think that'd be great, and then bring a proposed solution back to the.
Yes, because again, this agreement has to be signed by both parties. And it has to be agreed upon by both parties, so.
Well, I don't know what the direction would be, but it needs to be revisited. Right?
The negotiations. you know.
So, yeah, as long as you're okay with, me starting that conversation, and Missy and I will work with Mike and set up some time, so. There is no action on that item, so I'm just looking to, close discussion.
Move to close discussion on the finance on the community agreement.
Second,
Johnner,
Aye.
Holmes,
aye.
Mueller.
Okay, item number 5, the city of Pella is with us this morning. They have brought, and they have a PowerPoint also. Mr. Nardini is with us this morning, the city administrator, and, board, what we have is several items that, he's going to discuss with us. And I felt that it was important that, these items be brought all at once. So the PowerPoint, it is ready to go, correct? It's added on. Okay, all right. So Mike, if there's, if you'd like to come to the podium and, we can kind of go over these, one by one, I would be grateful for that.
Well, good morning. I'm Mike Nardini. I'm the city administrator for the city of Pella. It's a pleasure to be here, and also it's a pleasure also to consider these agreements to proposing partnerships with Marion County. Now, as we talk about partnerships for both the city and Marion County, it's important to talk about the status of one of our current partnerships that's been very successful. So you can go ahead to the first slide in our presentation, please. This would be the Prairie Ridge development that's on the western side of Pella, and it's been a raging success in our community. The development, for those of you that may not be aware of it, we do have a map here very shortly of it, but it originally consisted of 94 single-family homes, along with some townhome components that we had. Now, originally, when we planned Prairie Ridge, we were planning on potentially the development being able to build the lots out in 9 to 10 years. I'm happy to report from a single-family home perspective that we're completely built out in Prairie Ridge. And in fact, the developers started on the townhome component of the project of the development as well. They've issued 22 permits on the townhomes. So to date, when we look at building permits issued in Prairie Ridge, we've issued right around 116 building permits. We're just shy of $36 million in valuation. As those supervisors who work maybe and don't fully understand our agreement, the tax increment financing revenue for Prairie Ridge goes back to the county, along with the low and moderate income benefit to the development as well. Now, according to our calculations, based on the development being at full build, we believe it's safe to say that this development should produce low and moderate income fund roughly $1.5 million for the county to use to support additional housing anywhere in Marion County as well. So it's a tremendous benefit for both the county and the city. So let's go ahead, please, and take a look at the map of where it's at. For those of you that may not be aware, this development is located on the western side of Pella. We have the Prairie Ridge home that you see out there, and if you're familiar with Ulrich Ford and also the Chick-fil-A and now the West Side Social Club, the development's just to the northwest side of this is 94 single-family homes currently under construction. The townhome component of the development. Now, overall, when you look at those single-family homes, the average selling price on those homes has been about $314,000, and we believe that $314,000 unit price is still in accordance with how the state defines workforce housing, which supervisors are aware when we originally constructed Prairie Ridge, that was the goal, to provide additional workforce housing. That's what we certainly heard from our large employers as well. The townhomes, we believe, will have a selling price between $275,000 and $280,000 as well. Now, one of the great things about the development is probably it's kickstarted some other developments that have happened since we announced the Prairie Ridge development on this. Number one, we've had some commercial development as well, both the West Side Social and the Chick-fil-A. In addition, we've also had the Ethon development that started in Pella. Phase 1 of the Ethon development is going to be approximately 37 homes. And this is really geared towards senior housing in Pella. And that's a significant need, not only in Pella, but also in Marion County as a whole. One of the items that we found that's really difficult to attract developers to do is build housing geared towards people 55 years and older. They're looking really to right size their living needs. And that's what certainly that on development is proposing. So that development has just started. I believe we have 4 housing units that started in the on development, and we're getting ready to approve plans where I think the city has approved clubhouse plans as well. So overall, we want to thank the board for your partnership on Prairie Ridge. We believe it's been a success to date, and on this, it's once again on behalf of the city of Pella, thank you. Is there any questions before we go on in our presentation on the Prairie Ridge development.
That's kind of private development. I mean, it's not a gated community or anything, right?
No. I had to watch that as supervisor Mueller, on it, the streets are public and the Epcot development, so it's not a gated community. It's geared towards individuals 55 years and multiple holders, so we think it's very unique, offering within this region. Very successful in the Des Moines metro area as well.
And the 55 and older is a requirement for ownership. You have to be 55 and older in order to buy and be a resident in that area. Or that's just the goal.
That's the goal, that's the preference, that's what they're marketing to, anyone can buy a home in the development as well, but they're geared towards individuals and really marketed towards individuals 55 years.
Mike, I have a question regarding Prairie Ridge. Since that has been built out, when do you fulfill that, that TIF will be fully paid?
Yeah, well, I'd love to answer that question. We think it's gonna be, I'm not sure in answering that question, because I'm not sure how the county's debt structure was, because about the same time there was an investment in the VA campus in Knoxville. There was also the Prairie Ridge development, and I can't remember if those two bond issues were joined at the debt and the valuations, or if they were separate.
Those two bond issues are separate.
Okay,
So the Prairie Ridge is ahead by a couple of years of the VA. And it's, every year increases on what comes back, so, but I don't remember the lifespan either. I apologize.
That's okay.
I think it's 15 years, and from our standpoint, we believe that there should be an accelerated payoff on that, be able to return that to the tax base as well. One of the key items that we have is also the LMI component of that, and again, that's significant. So when you look at both repaying the bonds on that, plus the LMI, that development is going to take about $6 million in combined revenue for both of those to occur.
With the residential values, it just takes quite a while for the property tax to catch. So this will probably be about the first year of the full bill for valuation, what we do it. And then you never know what the rollback's gonna be, what residential rollback's gonna be, so. I would assume that Brian will be certifying about full, but he doesn't have to certify anymore, but we'll be about full bill, for taxable base, so.
I appreciate that.
Well, let's go ahead with the presentation, continue the housing theme. Now, as far as additional housing within our community, it is still a strategic priority of the city of Pella. This is certainly in line with what we've heard with business and industry at the city today. And in fact, we recently had a housing assessment in Marion County, and they identified in the Pella market roughly to meet housing demand for the year 2035, right around just shy of 1,300 housing units that need to be built in our community. Now, when we look at the need for additional housing, what we're considering today at urban renewal plans, it's always important anytime you talk about potential economic development incentives, just to take a stand back, make sure there's a need in your community. And then by judging the need, we look at a couple different sources. One of them is the housing assessment that we recently had done in Marion County. We also look at, from the single family home perspective of things, is what is the number of buildable lots, shovel-ready lots that you have in the community. Now, industry standards, when it gets to the single family homes, Gus, is if you're looking at what you should have as far as your inventory, is somewhere between a 2 to 3 year ratio inventory in there. And the reason for this is, those of you that are not familiar with what we call residential developments, if you were to go out to most residential developments, what we call greenfield developments on it, it takes about 3 years to bring a new residential subdivision online with that. And so that's the reason for the inventory. For us, we issue somewhere between 50 and 75 building permits a year. So looking at this, the 3 to 5 years worth of inventory, 5 years is best case scenario on it. We believe realistically our inventory should be between 150 to 250 lots. Currently, we have 75 on there, so we've gotten up to about 1 year. But again, housing has been very, very in demand, and it's also something that we've heard in business and industry as well. So let's go ahead, please. Now, what we're requesting today is we have 2 residential housing subdivisions that we are considering on this. And with this, each one of them is really the first step of the development process, is what's called an urban renewal plan. Under the state code, the urban renewal plan is limited 10 years for cities if you're building non-low and moderate income housing. However, upon the approval of supervisors along with community school district, we can extend that urban renewal plan out to 15 for an additional 5 years. So it'd be 15 in total. And let me explain and I'll explain a little bit later in the presentation why that's important. I do want to state up for the record that the last time we were hearing, we looked at the residential subdivisions, it was a request of Marion County to have input on how the low and moderate income funds would be spent in our community for that subdivision. We do have that in the proposed agreements as well. So let's go ahead and talk about TIF as well as urban renewal plans. Now, when we talk about new housing subdivisions and economic development incentives, it's very important to understand that when we talk about rebating tax to developers, what we're proposing is to rebate a portion of the property taxes on the new homes that would be built and from these respective subdivisions. The developer would only be compensated if new homes are built on the subdivisions and if they pay property taxes. And from their standpoint, what it looks like when you factor in low and moderate income percentage under state law, under there, it equates about 50% of property tax paid on new homes. Now, briefly, explain this. When you look at it and we propose housing within our community, if you're not proposing low and moderate income housing, you have to dedicate what your low and moderate income housing percentage is in your respective county is that, and dedicate additional funds for the benefit of low and moderate income housing. In Pella, our percentage is just short of 34%. So it means in these development agreements that if we generate the developer is fully compensated, the development has to generate an additional 34% of revenues that we could take and spend on low and moderate income housing anywhere in Pella. Now, the reason the 5-year extension is important to developers to consider this is from their standpoint is the low and moderate income housing requirement. We have to take and add on an additional 34% revenue requirements on the development. We withhold that as the developer, as the development builds out. So from the developer standpoint, they don't have full access to the property taxes, they have to fund the LMI. The second item that we have is the high cost of public infrastructure. We're going to be discussing very soon Fountain Hills Phase 4 and the single family home development that the developer is requesting a rebate for. The public infrastructure lot price, cost of lots that's dedicated or attributed to the cost of public infrastructure is $49,000 per lot on it. So when you look at the high cost of infrastructure, LMI requirements, and then from a developer standpoint, they're always uncertain as how quick the development will build out. Hopefully they're all discussed like Prairie Ridge, but chances are there might not be that, may not be the case in the future as well. So from their standpoint, it's an unknown. And what they'd like to request is an additional 5 years on their renewal. That's the reason for the request that we're making this morning. So let's go ahead, please. And again, I think we've explained this, but what we're looking at as far as rebates and economic development incentives, it's on new homes for this. This is not an existing tax base. How it works is a tax base where it's just basically for both of these developments would be agriculture property. It's frozen. All the existing tax entities get the same amount of tax revenues that they're currently getting on it. We're talking about incremental values for the property taxes for the new home that would be rebated back to the developer. And again, from their standpoint, after you factor in LMI on the homes, it adds up to about 50% on the value of the new home property taxes that they have. So if we look at it from their standpoint, they have a significant investment that they will be making in building the public infrastructure. They have to build it to the city standards. They have to dedicate it to the city of Pella. And then the development, frankly, has to build out, and they only are compensated if the homes in the new development pay property taxes. There's not a single home that's built in these developments, then the developer doesn't get anything as far as rebates. So most of the risk on this and if is associated with the developer. So let's go ahead, please, and talk about our first one. So again, Fountain Hills Board and Fox Ridge, they're going to talk about Fountain Hills is on the northern portion of Pella, and Fox Ridge is just north of West 12th Street as well. And with this, if they're in favor of the urban renewal plans, we will be placing these two resolutions on for future agenda for formal consideration. I believe we have some detail on each one of these developments. So let's talk about Fox Ridge. Yes, sir.
West 12th Street, just to put a landmark, what would be on Washington Street? It would be north of, is it north of Fairway or where's West 12th?
You know, Fairway is on West 11th, so West 12th is the exact street over. And so when we talk about
Record
12th
down,
Street,
record down,
Okay,
right north of.
I'm just trying to put it in perspective of where exactly. All right, great.
All right. Okay. Let's talk about Fox Ridge and what the developer is proposing is multi-family housing, which is needed up in Pella. Combination of 2 family homes along with housing on this. Cost of the infrastructure that the developer is going to incur on this development is $949,000. The projected low and moderate income housing that developers paid out, developer paid $949,000 for infrastructure. This development will also generate just over shy of $320,000 in low and moderate income housing that the city will have at its disposal for low and moderate income housing. So let's go ahead with Fountain Hills 4. This is a 47 lot, single family residential development. Again, the proposed terms on the urban renewal plan is for 15 years. The estimated cost of public infrastructure is right around $2.3 million. If the developer is paid $2.3 million, we will also by that time have generated $775,000 to fill up our house. So,
Yeah, can we stop and?
yes, so
Just
correct.
say, okay.
Yeah.
Mike, I got a couple of questions. Between Fox Ridge and Fountain Hills, it says, I believe in this agreement that you see, that you're hoping that Fox Ridge would be completed by December 31st of 2025. That in Fountain Hills, you don't have an infrastructure completion date, or do you have one? And
Yeah,
see it?
I think as far as the developers on it, Fox Ridge is just farther ahead in the legislative cycle. The development council has already approved the development agreement subject to the urban renewal plan being extended for 5 years. In Fountain Hills, we're going to be starting the legislative cycle at the city of Pelham October. So I would imagine sometime that if the board is in favor of sending both of these developments, sometime before the end of the calendar year, we'll be back in formal consideration for both of these developments. But it's very likely that Fox Ridge will be considered first.
And then also on Fox Ridge, in your proposal, in this format, you have 18 duplexes and up to 85 multifamily housing. In this, you say, in your urban renewal plan, it says 58 units. Just making sure that I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, as far as the urban renewal plans, this is the developers, what they're planning to build the industry through. The way to look at it is urban renewal plan has the minimum standards for the development. The developers also had various changing plans of what they're proposing, so that's the reason.
My next question is, we obviously know LMI takes up a lot of funding when it comes to extending, and doing TEP. But I guess I'm wondering, the extension for 10 to 15 years on Fox Ridge versus Fountain Hills, there's a significant difference in investment for infrastructure. Why do you not feel that you couldn't get it done in 10 years on Fox Ridge? Because it's 900, it's less than $1 million versus Fountain Hills is 2.3 million.
Yeah, please keep in mind, when we talk about financial projections, what we see is feedback from dealing with the developers. So from our standpoint, this is a negotiation on it. This deals with the extension of time with developers and the comfort level for making a significant investment in your community. These, just from my perspective, development is always risky. From a developer standpoint, they have to make a significant investment, whether it's Fox Ridge or Fountain Hills 4, for this to make a significant investment in your community. And they'd like to have enough confidence that they'll eventually be paid back to that public infrastructure. And that's the reason for the 15-year report. I would tell you on both developments, it's entirely dependent on how quickly they build out. Hopefully they're both like very rich and we can operate, retire that in 15 years, but not every development's like that. That gets into the marketing of the development, strategy of the development on it. So what they're trying to do is build in enough flexibility to justify the investment that they're making and also the risk associated with development.
So in the last several urban renewal plans that you've done, I'm trying to recall, just, because being here my 7th year. Have you come for extensions, or have you done any within the 10 years for the city? Because I would say this, it would be helpful if we had what you have for TIFs, and if you could give us an update, that would be great.
Love to.
Yeah, so, but do you have any that you've done recently that you've done within the 10 years? Or are you now feeling everything has to go to 15?
Well, please keep in mind when we look at housing in Pella, and maybe a little bit off of this, but really the investment in housing started sometime right around 2019, 2020. So none of them have been existing for 10 years yet. But we'd be more than happy to come and get an update as far as what we have. I can tell you, as far as the negotiation of developers, when you look at the cost of public infrastructure, the investment investment in your community, the uncertainty of how long it will take to actually build out, the uncertainty if they're going to pay back on it, a high LMI rate of public infrastructure. This is the reason for the 15-year request. So
Right, I guess maybe I need to make it more clear. Has the city done TIF, because they don't come to us if they're 10 years or, you know, have you done recently any agreements for the urban renewal plan or TIF for 10 years?
no, residential, traditionally what we've done back, I think, say since 2019,
Is the
they've all been 15 years on it.
Right, so board, just so you, making sure, just as a reminder, you know, obviously an extension extends it so that we don't receive that income. Either, you know, it's, we receive what it was set at, frozen time. And so that's an extension, which is roughly our 17-18% of tax base, that we're extending that in 15 years, none of us will, it's like a year.
Or if it's paid off early.
Or if it's paid off early,
I
correct,
mean,
yep,
if it fully develops and
But I guess
pays early.
I have a question on that, because when you do an urban renewal plan, and Mike, I don't know this, so I'm asking. When you do this and you can get it paid off in 7 years, can you issue more debt within that urban renewal if they wanted to do another extension of some sort, or is there an agreement that has to come back to us?
You would have to, let me take a step back. That scenario is unlikely in residential development. Usually the city, for the reasons that you just talked about, we could retire a TIF district in 7 years for residential development, turn it back, and the tax base will do it on it. The only time that that would even be considered is if you had some sort of additional infrastructure that was necessary within the development. And if that's the case, chances are you'd have to go back to a development agreement to be approved by the Pella City Council on it, but that has not occurred on it. I view that scenario as unlikely with residential developments.
Mike,
By the way, that was a very good question as well, so.
Mike, I have a question. With the LMI, and my past history, I know that there have been a number of developments within the city of Pella that have carried that LMI. And at the time, we talked extensively about what would we do with the LMI. Has the city of Pella ever spent any LMI? Has that ever been invested anywhere? And if so, where are those developments and what do they apply to?
That's an excellent question as well. In fact, the city of Pella, Mayor Ward is here this morning. He's recently appointed an LMI committee that's chairperson by Councilmember Lynn Branderhorst. And the answer to the question is LMI is something new for us. It takes a while, as Jake said, to generate funds on LMI. At June 30th, we actually had, I'd say, a fund that we could actually do something with the LMI funds from all of our developments. We have about $60,000 in LMI funds. And so we're in the process of putting together our committee, of which we're going to see this direction or input from Marion County as well as the school district on LMI programs within Pella. But prior to that time, it was not sizable enough to do anything at this point. But recently, as I said, council's appointed a committee and we will be soon addressing LMI in Pella.
And I think the reason for part of my question associated with this is to Keisha's point. I mean, we're now extending out from 10 to 15 years where the county, quote unquote, is not getting any benefit for the extra development. And we recognize that the development is not at our cost. So, I mean, that's fully understood. However, we're deferring that income for another 5 years. And we all know with current requirements by the state and how they're limiting our ability for additional revenue sources, that 5 years is really difficult for us to manage when we know there's development out there that could be producing revenue for the county to have access to, and now all of a sudden we're deferring it for an additional 5 years. I guess my point is, and these two developments we're talking about is just shy of $1.1 million within a 15-year time frame for the LMI. Would it not make sense to compensate the city that we would have more than just input on the LMI, that we would get a percentage of that LMI collection in order for that deferral to occur? Because we're going out an additional 5 years, wouldn't it be logical to say, okay, the county now has control over a third of that since we're extending the timeline by a third, or some other mathematical calculation that says, I mean, and I recognize that we're developing a committee to do the LMI investment. And as you said, in the city of Pella, at the very beginning, we talked about LMI as a countywide potential. Well, I see lots of opportunity that necessarily are not necessarily inside the city limits of Pella that could utilize some of those LMI funds. And those would be things that potentially that deferred income that we're talking about for that extra 5 years. We would have been able to fund that, but now we can't because we're gonna extend that development, that TIF by 5 years. So give us access to a third or whatever,
We do have.
control.
Prairie
not-
Ridge, yeah, we do.
We don't have control, we've got input, which doesn't mean control. And I'm sorry, I should have interrupted,
No,
I
you're fine.
apologize for that, but. So I guess what I'm suggesting is. Let's butter that bread on both sides and say, yep, you know what, we're gonna extend that by 5 years and make it 15. But the county gets control of some of that LMI in order for us to be able to make investments anywhere in the county. And that's just a suggestion, and I don't know if it's ever been done before. But to me, it just seems a little bit more fair way to manage that process of saying, okay. We're in a budget crunch just like everybody else, and this will enable us to help make those investments. In order to raise the water in the entire harbor, so all the boats float a little higher, you know what I mean? So that's just my suggestion or my request is. Your request to us is to extend it by 5 years. My request back to you is give us control over some of that LMI.
Supervisor Mueller, that's an excellent point. I believe the last time that we came with the supervisors with Prairie West, very similar questions came from supervisors over wanting to talk about the LMI. And I know that's a legal issue and we probably have to refer back to the county attorney because they spent quite a bit of time with the city. And I'm just going off head, I believe what we have, in order for that to occur for an LMI and the county to have control, it really needs to be a joint development between the city of Pella and Marion County, where it did joint urban renewal plan on it as well to have control over the LMI. With Prairie Ridge, that was a negotiated item as far as the distribution of LMI. We'd be happy to work with the county if that's the direction that we'd like to go forward in the future on residential development, but it almost needs to be done upfront with my takeaway on it based off this, and it's something that to be happy to look at.
It's bonded with Prairie Ridge, and so the negotiation power was, then those LMI dollars can be spent throughout the county.
But isn't this going to be an addendum to the existing TIF agreement to go from 10 to 15 years? And why wouldn't we be able to add a one additional requirement on that addendum that gets added to that agreement?
And that's a good point, and I don't know that, and
Right.
that's something that we could ask legal counsel, but I don't know.
Yeah, we'd be happy to, like, I'm just going based off what I remember, but it was my takeaway that if that was to occur, it really needs to be a joint urban renewal area between the county and the city, and this county would be more at the development, the role we're taking right now on. That was fine.
And like I said, I'm not trying to get control over the entire LMI. I'm just trying to say, you know what, let's treat everybody fairly because we're deferring. And
So
we're
the
not having
schools-
access to those.
I wanna make sure that I understand currently, now the schools, the state is now back funding them, correct? When it comes to their TIF portion? Is that correct?
That's what I understand too.
Yeah, we have to check with the school.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay, all right. So I guess we kind of need to be able to give him, I think it'd be good to do chunks and which giving direction, for him. To proceed, are you wanting wanting Mike to check out and see if there could be some sort of a,
I have utterly no issue whatsoever with extending it to 15 years with the agreement that we will get a percentage of control over a certain amount of that LMI fund.
Mike, is that something that you can look into?
Yes, I'd be happy to look into that.
I would appreciate that, so.
I was gonna- If I can just jump in, my recollection.
And maybe it's not possible, but at least we gotta ask the
We
question.
definitely should have legal counsel look at that again, but I think that there are differences here. Was that in Prairie Ridge, the county was the bonding, issued the bonds and was part of the development agreement, so it was the developer of the city, the county. And so we were part of that whole urban renewal process and all that. All these other ones, the county isn't part of it, so I don't think the county has access to that. It has no risk, it's not access to maybe direct funding of the LMI, that's what my recollection is. Because it's development agreements with the developer and the city, and then it's the city's URA. the county, I think what Mike alluded to is the county wants to be part of it, the whole package from the beginning. That's kind of another whole, that's a whole different look, a whole different thing. So I think that is the difference.
And I get that at the beginning, but I'm also recognizing that at some point, it's all, right now, we're back into negotiation.
Yep.
And I'm just posing that
Yep.
we're in a situation where we can say, no, we're gonna hold it to 10 years.
Yes, sir.
And in order to say, yes, we're gonna extend it to 15, okay, let's get some benefit to the entire county, because it is costing the rest of the county taxpayers, because we're not getting the benefit of those tax revenues.
If we extend it to 15, it still affects what the Prairie Ridge to some extent, does it not? What do we on Prairie Ridge?
No, these were the Fox Ridge and Fountain Hills. These are two different.
Yeah, these two different.
Okay.
And I get where you're
Yeah.
coming from. There's
Yeah.
always something unique.
Yeah.
We have a unique, we're gonna discuss a unique agreement, right? You know, there's always something unique.
Yeah,
And that's something
that's what. Different
And I'm not trying to be hardcore, I'm just saying, you know what, right now is the time to ask the question.
Absolutely.
Let's all get smarter about this process and make an objective and informed decision on what's appropriate to be fair to everybody.
And that's something that, we have outside legal counsel we could ask too, so, or we could ask counsel within too, so, okay. If you could check on that, Mike, I would appreciate that. I'm gonna let you, go on to local option sales tax. I think that's the next topic.
Alrighty. Let's go with the slideshow, please. First of all, when we talk about the city's local option redistribution agreement, I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for being supportive of this through the years. This is an important agreement, not only for the city of Pella, but throughout Marion County. We're going to talk about the reason why it's important for us in Marion County as well. A little bit of history on this is the city of Pella has had a redistribution agreement since 2007. The current agreement is based off of the agreement that was negotiated back in 2011 on this. And I think there's benefits for all parties and all cities and communities throughout Marion County, but just because it's important to keep in mind that through these agreements, we're also stating that the city of Pella, in our case, we will continue to collect the city's local option sales and services tax. Now, as far as the agreement is concerned, our current agreement expired on December 31st of this year. And the reason why we're talking about a redistribution agreement traditionally is how local option funds in Marion County and the state of Iowa are distributed. It's not matched on how the funds are actually generated on this. A little bit of background on this, I believe, as far as the distribution of local option sales and services tax based off 75% of your community's population and 25% of what the property valuation were between years 1984 and 1986. Now, don't ask me why this was originally set up this way. Won't make comments on it, but it's led to some inequities. And in our case, I could safely speak is currently when we look at sales tax in Marion County, the city of Pella generates 65% of sales tax revenue in Marion County. However, when we look at the local option distribution funds, we currently receive 28% under the state's distribution formula. So let's go ahead, please. Okay. A little bit of background. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the negotiations back in 2011. Now, during that time, we were able to work with both the city of Knoxville and the city of Pella and Marion County on a redistribution agreement. The reason why that was important is Pella and Knoxville today, we still have that same percentage. We contribute about 95% sales tax revenue in Marion County. So when we looked at this formula back in 2011, I have it on the slides that the formula, the existing formula was based on 60%. It was actually 65% is the distribution formula back in there. So the goal of the distribution formula through the 2011 negotiations were to ensure that each community received roughly about 65% of the funds that they generated. And that was thought to be a fair compromise. And that's how we originally came up with percentages of 8% for Pella and 4% in Knoxville. Let's go ahead, please. Now, when we talk about the 8% redistribution, city of Pella, on that amounts to about $475,000 per year. If you recall, when we talked about previous versions, and this is back in 2011, we generated about 54% sales tax revenue in Marion County based off the latest fiscal year 2024. The city of Pella has grown about 65% on that. And so when we look at trying to, what do you do as far as the redistribution proceedings, the redistribution agreement moving forward, we talked at our council, and this was a staff initiative, was to try to have a goal with the redistribution agreement, getting up to 60% that would be maintained in health. That's been traditionally an important item in our community, and the thought is if we're going to collect the tax and health, make sure that there is benefit associated with collecting the tax, and majority of the revenues generated are city of health. So that what we would have in order to get to 60%, please keep in mind, is that redistribution percentage that we believe would need to be about 11% on this as well. Let's go ahead, please. Now, unfortunately for the board, I've limited the number of spreadsheets that we're showing here. So if there's any additional questions, be happy to check into it. But again, what this chart simply outlines is what is generated and by sales tax records versus what is received under the state formula. The city of Pella, roughly 65% of sales tax revenues in Marion County are generated by the city within corporate limits. And what we've received under the state formula is just shy of under 44% on that as well. So let's go ahead, please. And what we're proposing is, when we looked at this agreement, and I realized 2 years ago when we talked about this at the time, the supervisors were in favor of a 5-year agreement. It's our understanding the city of Knoxville has a current agreement that expires, but it doesn't expire for another 3 years. So the proposal that we discussed at the city council level was a 5-year agreement, but the first 3 years would be status quo. So we need to get 8% on this. When we look at 4 and 5, in both Knoxville and Pella would be up at that time. That's when we would put going to 11% countywide lost tax on that. And again, the goal is simply to get the city of Pella up to 60%. So very brief presentation on a very important agreement, not only for the city of Pella, but also all entities in Marion County. And once again, on behalf of the city, we'd like to thank you for your past support for this item. And we'd also be happy, I'd be happy to answer any questions board may have on this.
Board? Do you have any thoughts regarding?
My understanding is we're the only county in the state of Iowa that redistributes these funds. And you're asking for more. Now you're talking about, Hello raises what, 65%? What number of that is what percentage that would be that from residents from outside Hello spend that money this? I mean, that number to me means nothing. Other than I understand it's generated there, but who's generating? That's my point. I mean, in the reality is we're struggling budget wise also. And if maybe 40% of that is generated from the residents of the city and 25% is generated from outside, it's fair that this money goes to the people that are actually generating that revenue, which means infrastructure, which is going to get us when we go our next presentation. That's where I'm at. I mean, who's generating the revenue?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that, Supervisor McCombs, if you like. Please keep in mind, in order to generate local option, I believe I heard the comment earlier about essential infrastructure and how necessary it is. We would fully agree with that. We would also agree with public safety is very important as well. When you look at commercial business that goes on in Pella, it takes a considerable amount of infrastructure on it. The city of Pella has made significant investments in our water utility, our distribution system, to be able to have new commercial sales tax districts. We've also made extensive investments in our electric utility as well. And we also have spent a fair amount on public safety, both police department and ambulance as well. Absent any one of those, what I call essential services building blocks, it's quite questionable on how much local option tax or sales tax could be generated within Marion County. And so what we've looked at traditionally through the years of the city of Pella is when we spend local option funds on it, it's just simply a recognition that it does take investments in the community, takes infrastructure. We've certainly had significant investments through the years. So we agree with the comment that infrastructure is important. What we're simply looking at is simply collective tax. There's always been a thought or discussion at the city council level that a majority of our tax had to remain in Pella. That was a priority item.
I think that regarding local option sales tax, I think back in the day, it was, actually, we bonded against it, the law enforcement center. The law enforcement center has been paid off, and so there is no bonding against it. But after doing much research and looking at local option sales tax, most of the counties use these funds, that's how they're supplementing and being able to do infrastructure and outside things. How many times have we had, I don't even know what the road is, but the Catholic Church come to us and ask us, will you please help us get our road paved? 50% of that road is in the county, it's my understanding. These are funds that we could maybe use to utilize some of that in the future. But I think it's right now, we take our agreement is there is no sunset. Pella does have a sunset. But 50% of that has to go back to property tax relief and ours. I think the verbiage has been changed for the city of Pella. I believe there is infrastructure in there, but it's not 50% does not go back to property tax relief. So this is a gift, and he has definitely said that this is where do we want to continue to extend the gift? Do we want to look at sunsetting the gift? And then hopefully, maybe if we were to sunset the gift in the near future, then we would be looking at setting aside some of those dollars and maybe working on projects such as, I know we got Weiler Drive, that road, it needs some work. I believe that is 50% or close to in the county, maybe it's all county, I don't know. But those are all things, and those are things ultimately that I'm assuming if that road was paved, like the Catholic Church or Weiler, it's gonna be annexed. That's helping those cities. And then we also have to think about, we've got the outlying cities that, that need help.
Yeah, we're struggling now, we're maintenance mode.
Yeah, we cannot do, and I have passion for when they come to me and they ask, can you help us? They can't, because I'm not looking to go bond to do that. But this local option sales tax could be a way that in the future, we could be, setting aside some dollars and then working and doing that, like a local option sales tax, community type thing, and saying, working on projects, those submitted and then brought to the board. So
I can tell you where I'm at. I'm not opposed to keeping where it's at. I'm opposed to raising anything in the future because it's a gift.
And I honestly think that we need to get back to, I'll state where I'm at. I think that I'm fine with the 8% until it's, let's see here, city of Knoxville's is up 2029. So that, have an agreement there. I don't know where you're at, Jim, so.
A little bit of a history lesson that was Mike and I that actually negotiated the 8% and 4%. So I have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for our ability to negotiate those things. And quite frankly, the goal there was in order to make sure that we were continuing with the local option sales tax countywide and provided the necessary security for the county in order to bond against that for the law enforcement center. Now I recognize that the law enforcement center is now subsequently been paid off. And I also look at that and say, yep, you know what, I recognize that the city of Pella does generate 65% of the local option sales tax. And Steve makes a valid point of, there's a lot of people inside the county that goes to Pella to shop. So their tax revenues contribute towards that 65%. So I think that needs to be considered as well. I guess the point that I'm going for with this whole process is I recognize that the city of Pella generates and captures 65% of that, but yet the needs outside of the community, to Steve and Keisha's point, far exceeds what our ability is to help support them outside the city of Pella, countywide. And it's the local option sales tax that enables us to have those funds that we can go out, provide some of those infrastructure, make some of those investments. And I talk about investments, they're not a gift to those other communities, that's an investment in those communities, just exactly like the LMI that I just spoke about earlier. It's like, you know, if we took that LMI, or if we took local option sales tax from a county standpoint, made some of those investments in some of our smaller outlying areas to help prompt development there, that's gonna help them become more self-sufficient, create higher tax revenues, provide a better level of living for all of those communities. We talk about workforce development or workforce housing. There's an awful lot of people that live in these smaller communities. They don't want to live in a city, in a town like a Knoxville or a Bella. They want to live in more of a rural establishment. If we can create a better environment for them, then those will develop more, and then they provide better workforce for the larger employers. Whether you're in Bella, whether you're in Knoxville or somewhere else within the county, I think we need to take a look at this and say, how can we benefit the countywide? We need to stop looking at those things and say us, them. We need to look at these things and say, how can we invest our revenues, our gifts countywide in order to help elevate the entire county? Not whether I just live in Knoxville or Melcher Dallas or Pleasantville or the city of Bella. We need to look at what's the benefit of the entire county. And in that regard, I'm not opposed to keeping it the way it is until this thing terms out in 3 years. And then we need to talk about it. Steve and Keisha make a good point. It's like, you know what? This is the only 2080 agreement in the entire state of Iowa that gets redistributed for local option sales tax anywhere in the state. And that includes Dallas County, Polk County, and we all know what kind of local tax revenue those guys generate. They don't redistribute those to the different cities. They keep those in the county. So, and I'm not foreshadowing any future vote. I'm just suggesting that we need to really look at this as a big picture and not as an us-them environment. This is something that we have an opportunity to invest in order to elevate the entire county.
Well, no, we lean heavily on these lost funds when we're doing this, our secondary roads facility, which benefits all 30,000 some thousand people. And, you know, we lean heavily on. And so we wouldn't have to ask the taxpayers for any increase. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I understand where you guys come from. I hope everybody understands where we're coming from too.
It's tough. It is, and you make valid points, Jim and Steve. I'm not looking to just cut it off. I'm looking at, I don't know that we can go, I don't see that we do another 5 years. I think we align those agreements back up. We want to do the 8% until then, and then, you know, come December 31st of 2029, it's another discussion, or we look at sunsetting.
Let's make that decision at that time. And please don't misunderstand. I mean, at this point, if money was plentiful, if we didn't have any problem with trying to make investments and those kind of things, it'd be easy. We just say yes to everything. But unfortunately, we're elected to make some really difficult decisions, which isn't necessarily going to make everybody happy. So that's all.
Understood. Once again, I'd like to say on behalf of the city, fellow, we appreciate your support. So we more happy as we progress with the agreement to talk about future years, and I'll report back to the city council position for 12. Okay. So let's go ahead if you could please on here. We have an opportunity to work together is what we're seeking a partnership with the board of supervisors on. And this is the Pellet Community Center. A little bit of background on the community center. It's been in our community for over 100 years, and it's going on almost 50 years to serving as our community center now. For those of you that may not be aware where the community center is at, it's directly west of the Pellet Public Library, right in the central business district. Now, overall, the facility serves a number of entities and a number of individuals throughout Marion County. We're going to talk about that here very soon. But the building is in need of renovation. We are planning this renovation to occur on the facility in 2026. Now, with Lucky and Pella that we have an outside group that is currently raising funds for the project, that's the Friends of the Pellet Community Center. And we have an estimated cost of our project of $8.3 million. The city of Pella City Council has agreed to contribute $5.5 million towards this facility. And what we're requesting from the board is we'd like the ability to apply to a state of Iowa grant, enhanced Iowa grant, the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Now, unfortunately, the Iowa Economic Development Authority requires a local match from the county government of $25,000 for this project. And so let's go ahead, and before we move on to the Public Community Center, included in this $8.3 million renovation is renovation of the existing facility. And then also we're looking at on an elevator addition along with the stairwell addition, and that all of those two additions just to make the facility more accessible on it as well. So let's go to our next slide, which we have here, and talk about some of the uses of the Public Community Center. Now, when the facility is fully operational, we typically average about 30,000 units of service that originate from this facility. Crossroads is a social service agency that provides needed services throughout Pella and Marion County. When you exclude the Quantum Classic that they organize, and by the way, that's a very successful event for Pella and Marion County, they typically average about 13.5 or 13,000 units of service on that. And it's my understanding roughly 35% of those units of service originate outside of Pella. So it's heavily used by rural Marion County and the rest of Marion County. Union Street Players, very popular at the Active Group on this. Typically for our participants on our shows through the years, we've averaged 3,000 to 4,000 in attendance from shows of Union Street Players. It's my understanding that roughly about 20% of the participants, that used to be the actors and people that help organize these shows, originate outside of Pella. So it's not only a popular show destination, but it's also a popular recreational activity for adults in Marion County. Now, the Pella Community Arts Center is a phenomenal operation. We typically serve about 700 students throughout Pella and Marion County. Roughly about 30% of the students that we serve are outside of Pella. So once again, when you look at it, it's very heavily demanded. And I would like to point out one of the key goals on this renovation is to basically put back into service the gymnasium and out of service on this. That was a very popular destination in Pella. We have a large homeschool group around the area that utilizes the facility on it. And so through this renovation, we'll be actually bringing the gymnasium back online. Prior to its closing, we served about 8,000 participants on that as well. And it's the same thing like the rest of the city's recreation programs. Somewhere between that 20 to 30% is really for entities or citizens outside. So if we could go back to the previous slide, please. And what we're requesting on this is if you look at the fundraising, the Enhanced Iowa grant means everything to us as far as being able to put on the stairwell addition, that area project on it, and an Enhanced Iowa grant on that is going to be critical to be able to do that. In order to qualify for an Enhanced Iowa grant, which we're going to ask for $500,000 on this project, you need to have a local match, or required to have a local match from Marion County supervisors. So the city of Pella is proposing that supervisors shall name for $25,000 to this project to serve as a community local match for the center.
So I'm gonna bring up, make sure that the board is fully aware. So the last agreement that we did, the 2080 agreement, Mike and I had spoke, and at that time they were looking for also this grant similar of $25,000 in regarding the indoor recreational center. They put that within their local option sales tax agreement because we are giving above and beyond. If I understand correctly, Mike is wanting this above and beyond of what we currently have, so. But it can be written in that agreement if that's how the board wants to go forward with that, but. Kind of just need to give direction and what you guys is thinking on that.
Mike, thank you for the information, and I see that the city of Pella is planning to contribute $5.5 million to this project, and your only request from the county is $25,000. I have utterly no problem whatsoever in supporting a $25,000 donation for the advancement of that process, in addition to the local option sales tax. I know $25,000 isn't going to move the needle for us, but it clearly will make a big difference for the Enhanced Iowa grant. So I'm in favor of it.
My next question will be to Jim, is that something, are you wanting that to come out of like local sales tax? Are you wanting that to, because we're gonna have to give direction to Jake and which, you know, and I also wanna feel what Steve's thoughts are.
No, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I would say
Where it
in
comes
addition
from.
to the local,
In
in addition to the regular local officer thing.
So
Mike,
if
if you
the
can-
grant's not approved, then that $25,000 is coming back.
Well, it would be upon agreeing that the grant was approved.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem.
I do know that the grant opportunity comes at certain times. Is that correct, Mike? Is that something that needs to be? You guys have to apply for it, or like an October or November deadline?
Yeah, the application was yesterday. No, just as soon as possible. Yes, we'll be applying.
Well, I have a checkbook in my office, you need.
The Iowa board accepts grant proposals all through the year. It's about a 6-week cycle before they put it in front of their board. But we need for the city to make the grant, I'm sorry, I'm Marvin Danzani, the Friends of the Pelican Community Center. For the city to make the grant request, the application needs to show that county support. So we want to move forward as quickly as possible.
So board, are you gonna give us something, Mike, in regards to that, or would Jake, what would you prefer in regards to this? Or do we
I'm not
wanna
sure the
do something?
application, you can, this was a kind of a discussion item. So I'm not sure how detailed they want, if there's a letter or something needs to be signed, maybe that could be on the next agenda, if that's enough time.
We would appreciate a resolution or a letter. but
That'd be great,
that would
okay.
include with our application.
Okay.
Thank
That
you.
could be generated and sent over for the board to see.
Thanks.
Would that be timely enough?
That's who we would.
As long as they know that they can, you know, communicate the where it's support, but I think it also, yeah. I think the last item, Mike, University Street Extension, okay?
Our last item of proposed partnership is we have a very important transportation project that we're currently in the process of planning for calendar year 2006. That's the University Street Extension project, and the area that we're talking about, University Street would be extended from 240th Avenue all the way out to 250th Avenue. This would be done in conjunction with the city's indoor recreation center project. Now, as far as University Street is, start a little bit of background on it. It's been in the city's comprehensive plan for a period of time on it. It's important, you know, it's an important collector street within the city's comprehensive plan. And what we're talking about is the potential partnership with the county on this. And the reason why we have this is traditionally when we've had roads that a portion of the jurisdiction, controlled by one entity and another entity controls the other portion of the jurisdiction. There have been projects in the past that we have shared and the cost allocation based off the percentages each governing body's jurisdiction. A good example of this is just south of the Color Sport Park that you see up on the board with the old Highway 163, and this was a number of years ago before the Color Sport Park was built. We had a very successful partnership with Marion County. We actually upgraded that road that was prior to the sport park being open. And that basis, based off my recollection, was the shared partnership based off the cost allocation of percentage county versus the city. As it applies to University Street, we hired Garden and Associates to look at this for us. And roughly a little over 16% of this project currently is within Marion County. And that's really the genesis of our request today. So let's go ahead, please. Now, as far as the estimated cost on the project, it's roughly $6.1 million. If we were to go to the strict application of the percentage that's located in Marion County, on it would be right at $995,000. So that would be the starting point of negotiations of the request for the city of Pella. So let's go ahead, please. Now, in considering this item, it's very important to know that we've got a couple assets that we're currently building within Pella that should have a significant impact for Marion County as a whole. In 2023, we had economic development studies on both the cost of university construction at University Street along with Pella Indoor Recreation Center. And from that report, we've listed what the consultant felt would give economic impact for Marion County, which was just over 65 million and roughly 386 jobs during construction of both facilities. So let's go ahead and leave our final slide here. And I would like to thank the board for previous efforts on this. For the Indoor Recreation Center, we were able to secure a grant from and Tyler grant through the state of Iowa, $500,000, but that grant would not have been possible if we didn't have support with the Marion County supervisors on that. So that $25,000 grant helped us secure a $500,000 grant from the state of Iowa. But today, when we look at partners, public partners on both the rec center and University Street, with it, the state of Iowa is contributing $500,000 to the Pella Indoor Recreation Center. Likewise, when we look at the Pella schools, they are contributing to the operations of the rec center, just over $1 million total on that over the period of 5 years, our initial operations of the indoor recreation center. And we were fortunate enough to secure a grant through the Department of Housing and Urban Development for $1 million on the University Street extension. So overall, we've had very successful partnerships on these projects. But again, with this, and when we look at University Street, the city of Pella's request is for a joint partnership project based off percentages of the project based in each of the governing body's jurisdiction. So with that, I believe that concludes our presentation. And just in summary, before I get to my wrap up, I'll make sure I answer any questions on this proposed partnership.
Okay. I know that, I guess I need some clarity, Mike. So this 16%, and I have not looked, but I mean, that's within this, that's it within the 1 mile is what you're saying? Or what's, I'm trying to understand how it's in the.
If we can go back on this item, please, up to the first slide, I'd be happy to explain that. Let's go up a couple more right there.
Yep.
All right, see, if you see this yellow highlighted area,
Mhm.
that's the county, that's the city of Pella's jurisdiction up there. On the other side of this is rural Marion County. When our engineers reviewed this, they felt that 16% of this overall project, when we look at construction of the road, was within rural Marion County.
Tyler?
So Marion County does not have jurisdiction. Just because that lies within the county does not mean that we have road jurisdiction there. So just to be clear, you mentioned 218th place. Marion County has 50% roughly jurisdiction of 218th place. In this case, we do not have jurisdiction just because it is within outside of the corporate limit. Just clarifying there. Also, why this alignment? The city already owns property where the sports complex is, plus a 70-foot, I assume, right of way to the south. University west of 240th is already a 70-foot right of way. Is that 70-foot not large enough to accommodate this without the city acquiring additional right of way to the north? You know, Oskaloosa Street is a 70-foot right of way. I believe Prairie Ridge, the arterial streets in Prairie Ridge are also 70-foot right of way. I guess why are you purchasing additional right of way and coming to the county and with a fairly astronomical ask per mile cost and not just using the right of way and property you already have or assumed right of way and property you already have?
Those are very good questions, and they're engineering questions that we'd be happy to provide the answer when they really deal with the alignment on University Street and the fact that this will be a collector street for the city of Pelham based off of anticipated traffic loads as well. But we'd be happy to provide that information on that, what's gone in as far as the planning and alignment of University Street.
So my questions would be, why would we do this with what money? You know, from a secondary road standpoint, my recommendation would be to not contribute to this. We don't currently have jurisdiction. It's already been discussed today, the high cost of infrastructure. And it's really astronomical these days. And we have maintenance needs of our own that we struggle to fund. And, you know, the economic impact here is not direct. You know, that's a speculative, indirect economic impact for the county. So, you know, 65 million, you know, may be a good number, but that is indirect and would be filtered substantially before it comes to Marion County. Additionally, you know, with our typical costs, we would be and paving numbers for Prairie Ridge and the VA development of urban streets, utilizing those paving numbers for curb and gutter type streets. That's typically been 1.5 million per mile to 2 million per mile, so we're more in the $250,000 range for a 16% cost share, not 995,000. So I'm not sure where $6.1 million per mile is coming.
6.1 million is the construction at University Street along with University Street, and keep in mind, our standards also are curb and gutter on this as well, and if it's like past agreements, and it's been a while since we've done an agreement with Marion County, it was based off actual bid costs, so if the estimates are high, more the issue with more how that's reconciled on that is based off what jurisdiction.
The city already has the land, they own the land
Yes,
right away,
yes,
all the way through.
yes.
Including the area outside of the corporate limit.
Yes.
So this brings up the subject I brought before, is in the future, if the local option sales tax redistribution wasn't there, this could be something that we talked about. This could be something that we would say, hey, the committee has, if we formed a committee, in the future, that type of thing. This is how, I just don't see how we can afford to do this and do the local option sales tax. I mean, I'm just trying to be honest. It has been a struggle, and I know Tyler does not have it in his budget. And we just don't have the extra income because we're, without bonding for it, and I don't see that, we should be bonding for this, so. I don't
I've
know.
already alluded to the fact, we have 866 miles of our own infrastructure that we're struggling in maintenance mode with, and I think it would. I don't think I would, it'd be a myth if I was, let's do another $1 million for a new stretch when we can't even fix what we got. I'm sorry, it's just the reality of it.
I wish that we could help wherever, but I just, funds are limited, and clearly we know that's what we're facing with House File 718, so.
I'll go back to my statement of, if we had all kinds of money, it'd be easy. But that's why we're elected to make those hard decisions. And I'm kind of in Keisha's camp in that it would be irresponsible, and I cannot, let me say up front and outright, any kind of decisions that's been made by anybody prior to my election, I cannot control what people have decided in the past, or what they've done for investments or those kind of things, or where the money has gone in the past. Not my deal, and I'm not going to question it. That's just the way it is. I can only be held accountable to what my decisions are going forward. And from a business standpoint, and from a concern over making sure that I'm representing the county in the most fair way that I possibly can, I also recognize that we don't have $1 million just sitting around unallocated, ready for deployment somewhere. Literally, we would have to go out and borrow $1 million to give it to you guys. And that would be very difficult, especially when we look at that, and we'd be having a different conversation if we said, oh, well, there's a housing development that's gonna go into here and it's gonna have, 300 houses development, and it's contingent upon having university put through. That'd be a completely different discussion. But putting through university in today's standard, looking at that, generates no additional countywide property tax revenues. So I got no way to pay for that other than to put that burden on the rest of the county. And I'm sorry, but as much as I want to help out and do those things, I can't. It just seems irresponsible to me to spend money to have somebody else pay for a benefit that they're going to receive nothing for. They aren't going to receive that.
Well,
So-
yeah, I always go back to our own infrastructure, but if we can't get people from point A to point B, all these other numbers are moot points. I mean, that's the reality of it, Mike. Like I said, we're struggling with our own infrastructure needs.
Well, I appreciate your consideration of this, and I'd be happy to report back to city council, and hopefully with construction of these assets, we'll be talking about the 300 unit residential development in the future.
I would welcome those discussions,
Yeah.
Mike. I absolutely.
Understand, and I'll report back to the city council. That was really it for my presentation. I'd like to personally thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. Also like to thank you for your consideration on this and also from the city council. We want to thank you for our partnerships as well. So thank you.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to close discussion.
Move to close discussion.
I'll support.
McCombs.
Aye.
Mueller.
Aye.
Johnner.
Item number 6 is the application renewal for Class C retail alcohol license for outdoor privileges, also known as the gathering grounds. Don't believe we had emails regarding anybody having issues with this. You good, Sheriff?
I have no issues with it.
Okay. Jake, I believe this is just comes through you. Is there any? All right. Or do you have any further questions? If not, entertain them approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
I'm sorry, I missed you.
I move to approve. Steve, support.
Mueller.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
Item number 7 is also an application renewal for retail native wine license with living quarters and outdoor privileges for Nearwood Industries on Highway 14.
No issues with that one either.
I don't believe that we received anything else from environmental health or anything, so that, further discussion, entertain a motion.
Move to approve the renewal.
Support.
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
Mueller.
Aye.
Item number 8 is resolution 2025-81. This is the resolution to authorize destruction of non-permanent records in the county auditor's office. Jake.
Yeah, so this is our request. We, it's time to, do a little clean out in our basement. We have a certain area that we keep historical, election records in, for a minimum of 22 months for all elections now. For the new, code, we are past that for the 2022 general election. There's no outstanding issues. This is, just seeking permission to do a official.
Board, do you have any questions? No, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Support.
McCombs.
Aye.
Mueller.
Aye.
Johnner.
Board of Supervisor updates. Mr. Mueller. You guys?
Last week, we all participated in certification of Swain Boat Dock Incorporate. With the Conservation Commission Board, we discussed equipment purchases and also discussed the process and goal for the salary survey that's ongoing. And this week I have an impact board meeting on Thursday afternoon.
Mr. McCombs.
Yeah, I have a further meeting Thursday.
I have nothing. So no further updates, entertain, adjourn.
Move adjourned.
Support.
McCombs.
Aye.
Mueller.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.